Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. I am Ayman Adnan, and on behalf of BEP, I welcome all of you to this August gathering, this August virtual gathering of debate and dialogue. We are holding a webinar today on gig economy, and I hope that we would have a great exchange of ideas and knowledge. Before we move on to the webinar, I'd like to express my thanks to the panel of distinguished guests who have acceded to be our speakers for today. And the topic for today's webinar is gig economy, where everything would revolve around the caveats, the needs assessments of Pakistan on the level to which it requires to benefit from this economy, this model of economy, and also the need for Pakistan to develop its policies and governance infrastructure in a way that is going to help each one of us and the population at large get more benefits out of this model. So, ladies and gentlemen, our first speaker is Dr. Nadeem ul Haq, a very distinguished person in his own right. He is not only the Vice Chancellor of Pakistan Institute of Development Economics, Islamabad, he has also been working with the Planning Commission. He has also been a former senior resident representative of IMF. So we are delighted to have you with us. Please start with your talk. Thank you. Let's give Dr. Saab a couple of seconds.
Ji. Thank you very much, Ji. It's a pleasure to be with the Burki Institute. Dr. Saab is a very good friend, so I thought I should come and talk to you people. Nikiti, the topic that you selected, the gig economy and Pakistan's prospects there. Let's think about it for a minute. I mean, quite frankly, we have the gig economy here. We've always had the gig economy. Just because we got a new name for it, I think we should think about it. What we used to call the informal economy is the gig economy. Your people who work in shops, who do dihadis, who do this, that, etc. They are the informal economy, and we don't like them. We don't want them. We don't think that they are good for us. But now that it's got a new sexy name called the gig economy, we are all ready to accept the gig economy. But the gig economy is something that Pakistan has had for the last thousands of years. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the gig economy, even if it comes to us like Uber and Kareem, etc. here, but how are they going to benefit the people? The Uber drivers, the Kareem drivers, I know they work for a pittance, but we've always had the waiters or the coolies, etc., the gig economy that works. But the bigger point that I think you should all begin with, I think we all think of leapfrogging and we all think of technology. We pay lip service to technology. जब मैं जाता हूँ हुकूमती इदारों में, जब मैं जाऊँ कहीं भी हुकूमत में, हर कोई टेक्नोलॉजी की बातें करता है, हर कोई कहता है ई गवर्नेंस, ई दिस, ई दैट. बट एक छोटी सी बात आपको बता दूं कि हमारे पास तो इंटरनेट है ही नहीं. पहली चीज तो प्लीज लेट्स गेट रियल. PIT has produced a number of things on this. कि जी हमारे पास इंटरनेट है ही नहीं. Where do we have internet? When we teach online, for example, we can't get our students to access online because internet is only available on M2 or cities that are connected by major highways. उनमें भी कम है. So internet, when you get off the grid of Lahore, Islamabad, Karachi, internet really tapers off very quickly. इंटरनेट अगर आप चले जाएं जस्ट आउटसाइड, फॉर एग्जांपल जेल में इंटरनेट नहीं मिलता. आपको इंटरनेट चले जाएं कहीं भी, फैसलाबाद के कहीं छोटे से इलाके में इंटरनेट बहुत कमजोर है. दूसरी चीज, इंटरनेट बहुत महंगा है. आई पे 10,000 रुपीज फॉर माई इंटरनेट. ठीक है जी, इंटरनेट इज वेरी एक्सपेंसिव. अब मुझे अगले दिन कहा वर्चुअल यूनिवर्सिटी में कि उन्होंने कोई डील नेगोशिएट कर ली है कि इंटरनेट पैकेज विल कॉस्ट 500 रुपीज. वेल, वी डोंट गेट इट, आवर स्टूडेंट्स डोंट गेट इट. गवर्नमेंट ऑल्सो टैक्सेस द इंटरनेट. ठीक है, इंटरनेट सर्विस की प्रोविजन जो सी है उस पर बड़े ह्यूज रेगुलेटरी इश्यूज हैं एज वेल एज टैक्सेशन इश्यूज हैं. तो इफ यू रियली वांट टू लीपफ्रॉग एंड गेट समवेयर, तो पहली चीज है द गवर्नमेंट हैज टू प्रायोरिटाइज इंटरनेट. हमारे PSTP में आधे पैसे जो उनसे सड़कों पे जाते हैं, हम अभी भी सड़कें ऐसे बना रहे हैं जैसे कि देयर इज नो टुमारो। मुझे लगता है बाय द ईयर 2050, एमन आपकी जिंदगी में बाय द ईयर 2050 मेरा ख्याल है पाकिस्तान में ग्रीन एरिया कोई नहीं रहेगा, सब सड़क बन जाएगी, ठीक है। पर इंटरनेट पे पीएसटीपी में कोई पैसा नहीं है, 1 टका नहीं लगा रहा है हम इंटरनेट पे, फाइबर ऑप्टिक कोई नहीं बिछ रहा, ठीक है। और कोई नहीं हमारे पास वो लग रहे हैं जो होते हैं पोल्स इंटरनेट के, क्या उनको कहते हैं, जो चीज़ें होती है, वो भी नहीं लग रहा है। कोई हमारे पास सहूलत इंटरनेट की नहीं है बनाने की। अभी आपने स्पेक्ट्रम ऑक्शन की, आपकी ऑक्शन नहीं सक्सीड की, इसका मतलब है आपकी ऑक्शन का डिज़ाइन ही गलत था। अगर ऑक्शन ही सक्सीड की, डिज़ाइन ही गलत था, बट हु केयर्स, हु केयर्स। इंटरनेट तो हमें चाहिए नहीं ना, इंटरनेट कौन चाहिए, क्या क्या हमारे बच्चों को इंटरनेट नहीं चाहिए, तो पहले तो ये सोच लें कि वी हैव नो इंटरनेट एक्सेप्ट फॉर द प्रिविलेज फ्यू पीपल लाइक यू एंड मी। द सेकेंड थिंग इज कि आपने इंटरनेट डिवाइसेस पर भी टैक्स लगाया हुआ है। टू बाय अ टैबलेट यू पे 40% टैक्स, टू बाय अ कंप्यूटर यू पे सो मच टैक्स। अब हफीज सेंटर में जब जाता हूँ तो लंडे के कंप्यूटर आते हैं, आई लिटरली मीन लंडे के कंप्यूटर। What happens is that they buy computers on consignment, rejected computers from the West, and we buy those computers now. Mobile phones, we have taxed mobile phones. You can't buy an Apple now. Apple is 250,000 rupees, which is like $1,900, $1,800, something like that. Kafi महंगा है. Whereas Apple is available for $1,000 overseas. So you've got almost a 60, 40, 50% tax on Apple. If you're going to tax devices, computers बच्चों को नहीं मिल रहे, इंटरनेट बच्चों को नहीं मिल रहा, तो I think this dream of leapfrogging is a long way away. तो हम leapfrogging के बजाय पहले तो ये बोले ना कि इंटरनेट फॉर ऑल क्यों नहीं है, then we'll get to leapfrogging. और दूसरी चीज है कि gig economy is nothing to celebrate. Gig economy तो हमारे पास है. What we need really is internet. What we need is creativity. What we need is a better education. Those are the key things. वो gig economy अपने आप आ जाएगी if we have the basics. We too often try and get the, we wish for the best without knowing that we don't have anything. So if I have a Rolls Royce but nowhere to go, which is how the Nawab of Bahawalpur used to live, तो मेरे वो रोल्स रॉयस का क्या फायदा, there's nowhere to go. तो अगर हम गिग इकोनॉमी कर भी लेंगे तो क्या हो जाएगा, ऊबर आ जाएगी, ठीक है यार, ऊबर करीब वो माशाल्लाह बाहर वाले पैसे बना रहे हैं, हम तो बैठे बैठे रो ही रहे ना, वी कैन एट बेस्ट बी ऊबर ड्राइवर्स। तो माय सजेशन टू यू इज कि थोड़ा सा हमें बता दें कि इंटरनेट इकोनॉमी की, इंटरनेट क्यों नहीं हमारे पास, हम क्यों टैक्स लगाते हैं चीज़ों पे जो हमारे काम की चीज़ें हैं, और अगर हम वो करेंगे तो हाउ विल वी ग्रो द गिग इकोनॉमी, आई डोंट थिंक वी विल। And then let's also start respecting our own gig economy, which we've had for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your realistic remarks regarding the dearth of internet and how it is going to be a problem in our leapfrogging. Thank you. Now I'd like to invite Dr. Lodi, Dr. Suleiman Lodi, who is the Professor of Management Sciences at University of South Asia. Plus, he is also the Knowledge Management Consultant at BIP. Sir, over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Im. I'm just a student of the domain, and very correctly pointed out by Dr. Naimul Haq Saab, we have a lot of problems to handle. I would agree with that, sir. Thank you very much for that. I just would also present a few slides to support my argument. So if you allow me, I'll just share my desktop and continue with this. Okay, Ji.
Sir, I think you've already been given that permission. Yes, we can view your slides now. Thank you.
Yeah, you can view me. Thank you very much. Okay. Now, talking about the gig economy, we have already gone through some basic realities as an eye-opener. This presentation was basically about the challenges that the entrepreneurs would be facing in Pakistan. And of course, as a country, what Pakistan should try to do or what Pakistan can do. But before coming to that point, the importance of gig economy, that is it really important? So I believe that if we look at these questions and if we believe that these questions are correct, then I think we should take out some time and think what number one economy is, and then coming back to what is gig economy is. So if we are in a government or if we are in any other organization, and if we believe that employment is a social responsibility of a government, we believe in that, then I believe as a government officer, as a decision maker in government, we should think about what the economy is going through, what tools we have, and how we have to improve that. Similarly, if I'm a layman, a person who is working in Pakistan, educated, semi-educated, or highly educated, and if I'm worried about my future, what will happen tomorrow, what type of jobs will be there, what type of skills set that I need, then in that case, gig economy is a subject, as an area about which I should be worrying about. And finally, for example, if I am a politician and I believe that economy is a political and a social issue, then as a politician, I should also at least pay some attention to this area and see what policies can be done to improve it. As Dr. Naimul Haq was correctly pointing out, that the concept of gig economy is, of course, not new. It has been going on in this area. And similarly, we talk about even in the developed countries. In 1920s, the jazz clubs were there and people were going on doing short-term jobs. Therefore, when we talk about gig economy, the freelancers, the independent contract workers, the project-based working, or any other type of labor in which we are employed for a short time can be placed in this category of gig economy. Now, as we were saying, that gig economy has gradually taken place and it is developing. We have just gone through a bit of models on gig economy that is being done internationally. And we would realize that there are two major categories. One is the web-based systems available in the economy. In these web-based systems, we have Upwork, freelancer.com, and similar platforms. And if you look at them, you would see that if we use these platforms, the person can share his or her work around the world from one country to another. And as Dr. Saab was correctly pointing out, that our workers, our computer scientists, our other copywriters, they are using the Upwork and similar platforms and rendering their services across the continent. So in that sense, to a limited sector of the economy or some limited sector of the educated person, there have been some benefits. And if we look at the other category that we have, in this, we have local-based setups. For example, if we talk about Uber, Airbnb, or similar platforms, we see that if a person is in Uber business, then he is in the gig economy, but he is giving his services in a specific region, right? Therefore, the new business models that are taking place is that you can sell your services over the internet internationally. We have people in that. But at the same time, there is also a sector which is working on the local basis. I will go a bit fast in these basic slides, and we'll come to the point where we want to do the main discussions. Now, talking about the demographics of the gig economy, we see that in countries where there is high unemployment, people move towards gig economy. The same thing is happening in Pakistan also. And if we see that in United States and in European countries, we have 10 to 30% of total workforce in that area of economy, temporary works. Similarly, in UK, we can see that about estimated 2% of the total population is in this area. They're working in that form. Half of the American gig workers are college graduates. That means that they have a college degree, they are educated people, and they have to move towards this type of temporary way of earning money. And if we look at the age of a gig worker, the 35 years is in the web-based platform they are working. they make 41.9%. And for location-based platform, there are 31.5% of the people in the location-based. So the point is that you can have international activities available, and at the same time, we have a space available for the local activities. And the population of college graduates and the above is 67%, which of course you can see is pretty high. Now talking about the perspective of the gig economy, we have seen what it is and the demography of what it is doing. And when we talk about gig economy, there are basically three perspectives, which I have just observed while going through the literature. Once we can be talking about the platform of gig economy, that is the business model which is taking place. At the same time, yes, previously we were in the model, we were using the model, but at that time, the electronic support was not that much. So therefore, we were more on the local side of the gig economy and not on the international side. Second perspective about the gig economy would be that is on-demand economy. That means if a certain requirement of a certain type of service is increased in the area, you can get the people who are providing that services. So that is a on-demand economy. And the third perspective is the sharing. For example, you talk about Uber, you talk about sharing of car from moving one place to another, or sharing your home as a hotel for a short time of purpose. So there can be a number of perspectives on gig economy, and there can be more than that perspective. That depends how you are looking at it. Now coming to the main question, that why are corporate sector moving towards gig economy? That is extremely important to understand that previously we were able to have jobs in which the employer would be given a long-term job, and at the retirement of that job, that person can get what we call pensions and other benefits. Right now, as the economy is getting tougher, the organizations do not want their employees to be a burden on them. The organizations are happy to hire somebody as long as that person is able to return more to that organization. But as that person grows old, the organization would not be interested in providing them any benefits after retirement, like pensions, which was a normal in the previous times. And the organization would want to shift that burden outside that organization. And similarly, there are a number of other reasons, for example, legal responsibility of an organization. Therefore, they would not want to carry that also. And therefore, they shift the permanent employment to a gig structure. Now, if we look at that, what we believe is that the main loser in the case of gig economy is again the employees. They are the main loser because they are going to provide the services, but at the same time, the benefits, they would not be getting the fair share of the benefits that should be given to them. And as a nation, as a country, or as a citizen, we are concerned about the future. Because as the government is moving out of the labor sector, who is going to take care of the people? That is an important question, which I believe the government has to answer. We as citizens have to see what options we have. And similarly, the education system also has to see that what type of workforce is coming out, and the type of workforce that they are producing, would that workforce be able to earn satisfied return for the work they are providing? We have been talking a lot about that in BIP also, and the approach that BIP is following is the triple helix model, the systems approach, the approach that any organization alone or any sector alone cannot handle complex problems. If the problems are complex, we have to go for a comprehensive solution and a comprehensive answer to that challenge. Therefore, when we talk about triple helix, we have to see where the government is standing, as correctly pointed out by Dr. Naimul Haq Sahab. We have to talk about the tariffs. We have to talk about the infrastructure that needs to be in place. Other short-term advantages that can be given to the industry, that can be given to the academia, that can be given to the citizens, so that the government is able to perform its part. Similarly, we talk about the models that are going to work in this this economy, gig economy, and the important responsibility of the government, that is the fair play and the fair share. What is presently happening in this world is that most of our workers are, for example, let's say if we talk about computer science, they are working on international platforms, and these international platforms are using our workers to obtain the maximum returns for that organization. Our worker is losing in the amount of return of the money that the person is getting, and at the same time, the worker is not getting the long-term benefits. So as a government, the government, whether likes it or does not like it, they will have to go for some policy. As we in also management science, we say that if we don't have a policy for something, we do not have a plan for something, we are actually planning for disaster. Then comes the industry. By the way, if you look at the international industry, you look at Uber or you look at the Upwork, you would realize that the private sector is gaining more out of gig economy. They are able to get out more profit for themselves, and at the same time, giving less benefit to the labor class. And as a government, again, we have to see what we can do as a think tank for BIP. We have to see what we can do for the general public. So at least what we can have is a fair share for everybody. Because one thing is sure, and I believe that it is correct, that government cannot provide services to everybody. That is what we have been saying. But at the same time, government cannot escape from the social responsibility of providing a livelihood. And therefore, our point of view again is here to start this dialogue between all stakeholders and see how we can work together for that. That is all that I would like to say. All right, Eamon, over to you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for your comprehensive and interesting presentation. It seems that you had taken out a lot of time to even make it in the first place. So thank you again for sharing such scholastic knowledge with us. I'd now like to invite Dr. Iza Aftab to please share her thoughts on this topic with us. And I'd like to introduce her first. Dr. Iza is an economist. She has also worked with the Information Technology University, Lahore, and has been a student of public policy herself. So over to you, Dr. Iza.
Gee, thank you, Eamon, for that. I just want to start off by thanking BIP for organizing this very interesting webinar, and also Dr. Ijaz Sandusa. We got in touch and thought that I could, add something to the conversation. So I'd just like to thank all of you for giving me the opportunity to have this conversation. Look, it's always a tough act to follow once Nadeem Saab goes first. There's not much that you can sort of add after Nadeem Saab has come and sort of decimated the entire problem. But I'm going to take a swing at this. Look, when we're talking about the gig economy in the current scenario, we're thinking of technology, and then maybe there is something to be said about how we deal with theory, how we deal with issues in economics, how we're willing to sort of recognize them as economic issues if they now involve technology. Because the economy is essentially the informal sector. You could be a practitioner in the development sector. You could be earning, around, I don't know, $20,000 a month. But if you are a contractor or a consultant, you are a part of the gig economy. So it's not just your Uber drivers. It's not just the informal labor in the agriculture sector or in textile that forms the gig economy. So the entire informal sector is by default a part of the gig economy. There's a lot to be said about leapfrogging, and there are merits and demerits to that conversation. I feel Pakistan can consider leapfrogging when we're thinking of, say, the industrial policy, right? Because we're essentially producing goods which have a very, very low elasticity. We're producing textile goods. We're somehow celebrating the extension of the GSP plus status that Pakistan has received from the European Union, as if it's the best thing that could happen. Just recently, APMA said that they're going to add about 100 firms to its membership and, increase exports. But essentially, that's a volume-based game. So in Pakistan, there are all of these different conversations that happen at the same time. But when you think about the gig economy is sort of, completely entrenched into the formal economy and sort of moves around it. The Dr. Lodi just gave us an overview. There's nothing much that I can add to that because the data that he's given is sort of foolproof. We know where this data is coming from. We know where the question is coming from. But just to sort of add on to that, we do know that women freelancers tend to earn more if they're based in Pakistan and Russia compared to other parts of the world. That says something because when we think about the gig economy at large in Pakistan, women tend to be earning less. But when we bring into account technology and formal education, female freelancers seem to be earning more. Um, it's one thing to ask the government to formalize things, but it's quite another to say that the government must play a part in the leapfrogging. The question is, where is the gig economy going? Right? The gig economy responds to market forces. It responds to a demand for a particular type of service. Pakistan, you see all of these data that freelancing earning went up by 47% in Pakistan. It's the fourth largest growing market and fourth largest source of supply to the world. But what's interesting, and I'm not talking about the gig economy the way Nadeem Saab has defined it, and I agree with his definition. I'm just looking at the tech sector, something that requires the internet. If you look at that, Pakistan, it's when you're looking at software development and IT-based services in the gig economy, that's a very small portion of the freelance revenue that Pakistan earns, and that's a source of concern. And there's only so much that the government can do for that, right? You can do education and everything. If you look at Pakistan government's own track record with education and training, I don't know. I think the jury is still out on that. But for things to move forward, there are some simpler solutions, some low-hanging fruits that can be resolved. One big issue that freelancers in the gig economy seem to face in Pakistan is payments, right? And we can talk about the race to the bottom in a second, but like a bunch of our revenue comes from countries that are not the US and are not based in Europe. So I'm looking at Australia, I'm looking at UAE. Those are countries when they have to remit payment to our labor force in Pakistan, that currency has to be converted twice over. So if you have a contract from, say, Australia to do some sort of work, which is most likely not software and IT development, India is the market for that, that revenue, whatever you're earning, is going to first get converted into the US dollar, and then it's going to get converted when it makes it into your account. And I'm making a very, very big assumption, which is that people who are part of the freelance or the gig economy have bank accounts. They don't. Have you tried opening a bank account in Pakistan? I'm assuming everybody in this webinar has tried and has succeeded at opening it, but you've done it because you were working for the formal sector. So as far as, these big broad strokes about what the government is supposed to do, I'm with you. I think all of those things can be done, but you have to create the conditions for the leapfrogging to actually go into effect. And one of the simplest things to start with is to make it easier for folks who are in the gig economy to participate in the formal financial sector of Pakistan. So we need to be able to ensure that funds can be remitted to Pakistan and not just the US dollar and the euro. We should be looking at other currencies where it's easier to remit and the double conversion doesn't happen, because your freelancers and folks in the gig economy end up taking a beating, right? They end up losing anywhere between 10 to 30% of their revenue because of the conversions and the fees. So that's one thing. The second thing is we need to be able to tinker at the financial instruments that are available to freelancers. So because everybody's gung ho about taxing, and I'm a big proponent of taxing, but I need efficient taxing, right? I don't want everybody to be taxed in a blanket and a uniform way. That's just lazy. So you need to be able to let these people make open bank accounts, which means you need to bring down the requirements that you're asking of people who work in the formal sector. So if I'm working in a university, I go to the bank, I show them the contract, and I say, look, I'm an employee of a formal sector, tax-paying institution. Ergo, you must go ahead and open an account because I can give you a source of income. Freelancers can't do that, right? And the most some freelancers can do is if they work for an organization that does freelancing as a business. So that's a perfect catch-22. So I think creating a stable financial inclusion creates the right sort of situation. It creates the right sort of environment for your gig economy to start being formalized, and using the word very loosely. And also then you can start thinking of fiscal measures and stuff. And once you do that, then you have the revenue to sort of, upscale your internet outreach and facilities, while you're also thinking of other things, which is the actual gig economy of Pakistan. So I'm going to stop with that, and hopefully I've answered your question, Eamon. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Iza. It was a great discussion, great rather information from your side. Now I'd like to invite Dr. Atta Mansoor. I'd also take the liberty over here of congratulating him, considering he has just completed his PhD and attained the status of research doctor. So congratulations to you, sir. Now, I'd like you to please take the floor. And before that, I'd like to mention that Atul Mansoor Sahab has also been a researcher in innovation and technology policy. He has worked in research area for green finance and fintech technologies, and has also been researching on PRI. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Eamon, and thank you for the warm congratulations. Yes, it was a challenging journey, and I was able to complete my PhD recently. Anyways, it is also very challenging for me to speak as the last speaker, especially when experts and giants like Dr. Nadeem, Dr. Salman, and Dr. Iza have spoken. So I don't have, much to add here, but I'll take a shot from a different perspective. I agree with most of the things which have been said by my worthy colleagues and speakers, but I would like to, formally begin with some formal definition of gig economy, which has been evolving over time. So what the international agencies like OECD and developed countries like UK, they define is that in terms of connecting individuals and companies and the consumers of service through digital platforms. So if we see the evolution in this definition of gig economy, which actually includes the informal economy, which Dr. Iza and Dr. Lodi and Dr. Nadeem also highlighted, we need to understand that the usage of technology and connecting people through digital platforms is becoming an integral part of how governments, states, and international multilateral organizations are redefining gig economy. And we have to live with this fact because it's a transition. It's kind of a transformative kind of a narrative or a rhetoric, maybe if you call it a rhetoric, but it is what is happening in the international arena. At the same time, we have to understand some data also, which actually points out I would say, a very kind of a good picture or something which actually businesses and people who love risk taking, who would like to be entrepreneurial, who would be really, who would like to see this data. So by 2018, the global gig economy was standing at around 204 US billion dollars. And in just a matter of around 5 years, which will complete by 2023, this gig economy will actually more than double, and it will reach around $500 billion. So these are the figures which actually have been released by MasterCard which is one of the biggest providers of services, financial services around the globe. And this huge opportunity in terms of international growth of around 17% of the gig economy, which is actually being measured in terms of how digitally connected the consumers and providers of service are, is actually a very, I would say, attractive figure. Secondly, from Pakistan's perspective, I think Dr. Nadeem was right in pointing out the number of people who are using internet. But at the same time, I think I would argue otherwise. And I would take the support of figures also. If we see World Bank's figures of 2019, it says clearly that Pakistan has about 17.1% of internet penetration rate. It was in 2019. If we translate it into absolute numbers, at present, if we see Pakistan's present population, which is approximately 230 million, and if we apply the same percentage of 17.1%, it comes out to be around 40 million users of internet, which is by no means a small number. Although in terms of, if you compare it with India, which is presently about 40%, which has about more than 40% internet penetration, Pakistan's penetration of around between 17 to 20% is much lower. But I think still it affords a huge opportunity for digitalization of services and products, and making use of, those people which are actually part of this youth bulge, to channelize them and to use and enhance their productivity within the economy for ultimately and eventually leapfrogging. I would also try to, tackle this challenge of how gig economy can help Pakistan leapfrog from another perspective, which is actually trying to understand that how these independent workers which operate in gig economy, they are categorized into different segments. So if we see, international literature clearly points out that the free independent workers are categorized into four segments. The four segments comprise of free agents, the casual earners, the reluctants, and the financially strapped people. From Pakistan's perspective, it is important to understand that free agents are those workers who choose independent work and derive their primary income from it. So they are like the real entrepreneurs, the real risk takers who would like to work independently with flexibility and autonomy. And the second one, the casual earners, are also independent workers by choice, but they use independent work for supplemental income. These are the two segments of independent workers which actually need to be encouraged through what Dr. Lodi said, that in the triple helix approach, every segment has to play its role, whether it's policy, government through its policy, whether it's the firm level, and whether it is the knowledge infrastructure. So we need to capitalize on these two segments. And for that, definitely we need research, as Dr. Lodi pointed out, that we need to conduct and we need to build evidence and data for devising our interventions from policy perspective. The other two segments, which are the reluctants and the financially strapped, they are those people who in fact live on independent work, but would prefer traditional jobs. So they are looking for traditional jobs, and they would not increase from the perspective of productivity or enhance their productivity, even if gig economy is supporting them, because they do not have appetite for more risk taking, or providing services in a flexible and autonomous fashion. And finally, it's the financially strapped people who actually in fact do supplemental independent work out of necessity, who do not have their heart and mind with the gig economy and with how they should contribute with their increased productivity. And concentrating on the first two segments, which are in fact very important for a country like Pakistan, which include free agents and casual earners, should be the target of the policy. And we should see how these can be incorporated into the economy and brought into the mainstream economy. And my last argument, discussion would be around the issues which we need to bring into our discussion, whether the discussion is being done at a university or within policy circles or within industry, is to connect the dots which actually can redefine success for gig economy. Because success in the gig economy comes from a balance between viability and vitality. And what do I mean by viability is that viability is the promise of continued work, which means sustainability of that work. And vitality is the feeling of being present and authentic and alive in your own work. So if we do not bring in these concepts or these terms of viability and vitality into our equation, the success in the gig economy is a far-fetched dream. So how we connect the dots is that we need to take an approach from the triple helix model, which Dr. Lodi also highlighted, is that people need to understand that a culture and environment, those resources, those infrastructure facilities should be raised where people feel empowered, where people can redefine their success through a purpose which they should draw from doing their work, which actually creates a bridge between their personal interests and motivations and the need in the world which they are trying to satisfy through providing a particular service. And they should also be able to feel connected with the place where they want to work, because the biggest apprehension of people who study gig economy around the world is that people, when get disconnected from corporate places or brick and mortar places, then they feel that they have lost some purpose in life, and that feeling of losing that space creates demotivations. So if we connect these dots of place with purpose, and then finally people are feeling autonomous and empowered, then I think the gig economy can ultimately play a positive role in the leapfrogging of this country. I think this is all what I had to say from my side. Over to you, Eamon. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your enlightening perspective with us. Now let's progress towards the question answer segment of this webinar. I'd like to invite your questions either in the chat box, or you could just raise your hand and we'll give you a chance and you can speak for yourselves. So we have one raise of hand already. I'll also be sharing a question that we received while this webinar was going on, but I'd like to invite Mr. Wes Khalid first to ask the question, and you can follow up with your questions afterwards.
Thank you, Eamon. Actually, I have two questions. My first question is, as we don't have a financial infrastructure for gig economy in Pakistan, then how we will develop gig economy in Pakistan? Anyone can answer from the panel.
Thank you, Avesa. I request the panel to please answer according to their own comfort.
Eamon, do you want to take a couple of questions and then we can see how we can all address them? So if you want to take a couple of questions together, I feel that would be more efficient.
Sure, Dr. Azad, we can try that approach. Ms. Memuna, would you like to go next? Please unmute yourself and ask the question.
Hello, everyone. My name is Memuna Star. I'm student of NetSol Public Policy in Farm and Christian College from Center of Public Policy. So my question to the panel is that how can we attract and retain or sustain the skilled human resource in this circle of gig economy, in the gig platforms that Pakistan can provide? That's it. Thanks.
So now we have 3 questions in total. Would anyone like to take a go at them?
If you allow me,
Please, sir, go ahead.
All right. Very good questions, but again, I would just, it's more of a sort of my perspectives on that. Again, as we are talking about that, the systems approach may be the only answer for us to get us out of this problems that we are facing. For example, we are talking about, Ms. Maimoona was asking about the retaining of highly skilled people, or the getting correct type of the skill that we require. Or we were talking about how to have a mechanism in which a skilled worker is able to obtain the money from outside for the work that the person has done. Instead of asking these questions or viewing them in a silos, what I would suggest is, of course, what we are doing is we have to talk about an integrated approach for that. And of course, that integrated approach will have to come from our vision. We have to decide as a community and as a country that gig economy or similar models in which we are talking about technology that is helping providing services, or technology helping the economy, they are the part of the future, and we have to figure out ways how to get maximum benefit from that. So in that case, what I would suggest that for all these questions, the first part would be to develop a policy, not necessary from the government alone. As a community, as we are sitting together, we can have some strategic directions to follow, and those directions can be forwarded to government or related institutions. For example, HEC is part and is a stakeholder in this gig economy future, because through HEC, we are talking about the education sector and the way the education sector has to prepare our youth so that they are able to contribute in the future. Therefore, from this BIP forum, we can talk to HEC, all the researchers that are with us, and all the intellectual that we have with us, if we are able to decide on some directions. Thank you. That is what I would say.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone like to answer the question of the financial domain that Mr. West just asked?
Eamon, I can take a crack at that.
Please do.
So if I remember correctly, the question was about the financial landscape in Pakistan and how, if it's that shallow, what does that mean for growth? I apologize if I'm paraphrasing the question, but that's what I got out of it. Look, I think there's a lot to be done as far as the financial landscape of Pakistan is concerned, and I'm not saying that everything is sort of you throw the baby out with the bathwater. That's not what I think smart policy is. I don't think any economist worth his or her salt would say that. Look, I'm saying there are very simple, very straightforward solutions, which means that, and a lot of these things sort of help you realize some overlapping goals that Pakistan has. You want to improve financial inclusion, right? You want more people to be part of the formal financial sector, and you've seen once Pakistan sort of started following up with the FATF recommendations, we saw a lot of inflows and outflows in the country being formally included in our bookkeeping, and that sort of helped us really understand how much money was actually pouring into the country. So there is something to be said about formalizing finance. I'm saying for the gig economy to work, and I'm putting the other part of the economy to a side, because your informal sector is a larger part of the economy compared to the formal sector. The formal sector is a very tiny part of the Pakistani economy. That's been true for not just the past 70 years. That's been true for about a couple of centuries when you look at this entire region. So if you want to be able to include people, we need to be able to improve financial inclusion. So the requirements for folks who are involved in the gig sector, the requirements for those people to be a part of the financial sector must be brought down. So you should not make very, very steep demands from them, which means opening an account needs to be made easier. And once, not just that, I'm not saying कि आप account खुलवाते हैं उसके बाद आप कहीं भी जो मर्जी करना है आप कर लें. Of course not. You give the person who's opening the account about a 6-month grace period. Right, so you're asking for concrete steps. Now I'm giving you concrete steps. So if I'm a person who works in the gig economy, I should be able to walk into any commercial bank or the National Bank of Pakistan and say, okay, I want to open an account, and the bank says, look, I'm going to give you 6 months, and in those 6 months, when you get your contracts, you come and show those to me, so that I know what your source of income is, and then we can start thinking about how that gets connected into the financial, into the fiscal part of Pakistan. So there are very easy and simple ways of doing that. This also means that we need to revise how Pakistan codes labor. So, and I'm sure my esteemed panelists are aware of that, but for those of us who are listening in, Pakistan has its own coding, right? Down to the 4-digit when it comes to labor. So we know, we code people in the agriculture sector differently from people who are working in the industrial sector and the services sector. So what the government can do, and those are simpler solutions and easier solutions, which actually set up an environment where a lot of other goals are realized, is that we can take into account how we are coding freelancers, right? So once you know how you're coding freelancers, what 4-digit code is Pakistan assigning to them, then it becomes easier for the Pakistan Bureau of Statistics to track them. Then it becomes easier for your FPR to sort of come into play. And I want to reserve my opinion on many things related to these agencies separately. But I think somebody's okay. I'm going to try this again. So yeah, so very simply, let's reduce the barriers to enter into the formal financial domain, and also we should know how we're actually coding the freelancers, how we are formally coding them. So I think that will sort of help, because then you can count, right? Because when you think about growth in the economy, you're thinking of macro accounting, and for that we need to be able to count. But to be able to count, we know who we're counting. So I hope this helps.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Avesa, do you still have a question?
Yes, I have one more question, Ayman.
Ji, push lijiye so that we move on then.
Where through gig economy, where companies rely on independent contractors and freelancers rather than on permanent staff, are we not creating job insecurity among companies' employees?
Could you please come again, Avesa? Could you please repeat?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Ji.
My question was, through gig economy, where companies rely on independent contractors and freelancers rather than on permanent staff, are we creating job insecurity among companies' employees?
Okay.
Isn't it
Yeah.
one more risk to the employees of the company?
Yeah, we got your question. Nadeem Saab, would you like to answer this question? Dr. Nadeem, do we have you with us? So any other one from the panel, could you answer the question, please?
That's the premise of the gig economy, right? It's supposed to sort of shake things up. And Avais is right. It does create insecurity, but that's the future of work. If you look at labor economics, there's a big research agenda called the future of work. And that takes into account this very delicate balance between the formal and the informal sector. And if the gig economy was not disrupting the formal sector, then it wouldn't be having this conversation. And that there is a moral aspect to it. There is an ethical consideration. There is a moral hazard when we're looking at the gig economy. But it also helps you sort of set up the question in your mind, Abes, if I may, is why is it that firms would rather outsource the work rather than fix the working conditions within the firm, right? And that's a very, very important consideration to be made when you talk to managers, when you look at literature. The reason why people are outsourcing or using the gig economy is because folks feel it's a better use of money. They get more work per dollar spent. There's also more flexibility, and because the work is task based, right? अगर आप मुझे कहते हैं कि जी आपने ये 4 लाइनें मुझे कोड करके देनी है कि मेरा infographic बन सके, why is it that internally an organization cannot deliver on it, and they need to somehow reach out to folks in India, Pakistan, and Philippines to do that? So that's the question. So I don't want to give you an answer to your question. I want to leave you with more questions. That's the premise of a webinar. So the future of work, that's what we're concerned with. And the more disruptive the gig economy is, the more pressure there is going to be on the formal sector to improve working conditions. So yeah, so I hope that helps. And now I'm going to just sort of tell you, Eamon, I just have to duck out in a couple of minutes. So if there's no other question you'd like for me to answer, I'll have to take your leave.
Thank you very much, ma'am. First of all, let me just say that you played like a true devil's advocate over here. Thank you. Number one. Number two, yes, you are free to leave whenever you like. I think questions would keep on coming, and I think others will then answer. And thank you for your participation. But do stay with us until you can. So now move on to the next question.
Assalamualaikum everyone. Thank you, Eamon. Yeah, my question from the panelist is, what are the security implications of global gig economy for Pakistan?
Could you please come again? We didn't hear
My question is, what are the security implications of the global gig economy for the Pakistan?
Lodi sir, could you answer this question, please?
All right, thank you very much. As we were talking, and we were saying that there are a number of perspectives when we look at gig economy. One perspective, of course, is important, that is related with the security. Now, again, when we talk about gig economy, we are talking about certain skill set, which is not very easily available in countries. And that skill set is basically obtained from another country, right? I would like to started with giving an example. For example, if Pakistan decides to go for a large project, let's say a space shuttle type project, and they want to launch a project of that nature. Now, keeping in view the human resources that we have, and it is spread all over the country, it would be very difficult to collect all those resources at a certain place to start a project. For two reasons. For one is that we do not have any platform where we can map our resources. For a complex project, we need, let's say, AI specialists, but we don't have that. At least we have that in a country. We might have that in a country, but we do not have a data or a database where we know where to locate a certain person. So very specific skill sets cannot be obtained from a country, a developing country like Pakistan. And at the same time, all of our precious human resource, it might be registered in Upspace, Upwork, or any other platform in another country outside our region. So all our important resources are marked by other countries. And if they want to obtain that specific knowledge or work from Pakistan, they can do that very easily. Whereas we have that person, we have educated that person has grown with us, but we do not have any way to locate that person, right? I remember when I was in university, one of my professor, he worked with NASA, and he was working on lubrication that they used in the space shuttle. Now that is a very unique resource. And if we need that in Pakistan, we would not have that because we do not have a database that hosts information like this. So this question might be a little maybe outside gig economy perspective that we are talking, but again, it is related with that in sense. So it is correct that if we have a stronger system to maintain where the specific resources are, unique resources are, our organization would be able to collect those people and would be able to use them for a specific project. That is, I think, what we can add. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for answering. Engineer Sadiqur Rahman Rana, I'd unmute you. Please ask a question.
Thank you. My point is regarding institution building for promoting the gig economy as a great leap forward. What we say is required is SPM, imparting income generation skills. And second, facilitating and having a small manufacturing setup. And third is an umbrella for exports or marketing. We have developed the model by benefiting the Chinese experience when they started the market economy, and the millions of people were in the market after dissolving of the communes, etc. They imparted the scale for the wall hanging from corn cover and exported in $70 million and having the candles and art candle, etc. So my proposal with the Honorable Vice Chancellor Shahid Najam Saab is we can take the academia and government in the loop. We can have a helix and launch this along with the something 24 upcoming SEZ or industrial park, in particular this maize biotechnology products in the private sector in the coming days. We will be having second, we are suggesting to have a knowledge value chain with the upcoming private sector industrial parks. Knowledge value chain mean having the 4O, fourth generation industrialization or digitalization, IoT, AI. Second, having the R&D institutes for applied research. We are presently engaging with G20 countries. In particular, we have talked with the Chinese side, having the local R&D institutes, then academia for basic research, and then taking the BDSP, business development service provider, in the loop. Probably this dimension, this type of platforms for promoting the industrialization and the gig economy is the need of the hour. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So,
Eman, can I respond to Engineer Sadiqur Rahman?
Please go ahead, sir.
Sadiqur Rahman Saab, you know that I'm your great admirer for the passionate commitment that you have to somehow transform this CPAC into a knowledge economy. I know that many models that you have came up with and you discussed with the government, with the development partners, with all over, with the Chinese, we have not been able to make our headway. At this point in time, fortunately, we have the services and advice of very capable development practitioners and the theoreticians. Dr. Suleiman Lodi and Atar Mansoor, a dear colleague of mine. We are working on introducing what we call is the National Innovation and Technology System in Pakistan. And we are also developing the implementation framework. Triple helix approach is a part of, an integral part of that effort. And what we are trying to somehow promote and advocate is that a systems approach as advocated by Dr. Suleiman Lodi needs to be espoused. And we are working with the government, with the private sector, and with the academic and research institutions to come up with the real practical implementation models. And I'm happy knowing you that I would very warmly welcome you to come and join us. We will give you the recipe and you have the context. Let's together translate, concretize it into reality. And it will automatically not only address the formal economy that we are talking about, as also the gig economy. It will be a very good opportunity for us to address the employment. I'm not talking about the knowledge and technology transfer. I'm also talking about the poverty alleviation, of the employment creation, of job creation, of converting the comparative advantage that we have into a competitive advantage through policy, institutional, infrastructural, and programmatic intervention. So I would very warmly welcome you to come and please join us.
Thank you, Najam Saab. I hope it suffices your query, Sadiq Rana Saab. Now, let's take a question from, sorry, sir, please go ahead. Boliye.
Thank you very much. We have worked out a proposal and we can fix some time in the coming week and have some conclusive meeting.
Inshallah, looking forward to that, sir. Let's take a question from Baris Ali. He had posted a question to us. So his question is about if gig economy, I feel, Dr. Atta, this is the question that you might be able to address answer to. His question is, if gig economy is so lucrative, then why most skilled workers prefer doing the traditional jobs instead of choosing independent and growing industry?
Okay. Thank you, Eamon. I actually lost the connection, so I couldn't read in the chat box. So I'm back in the meeting now. So what I think is that, you see, it's the risk taking, it's the risk appetite, which in fact matters. So gig economy brings with itself for the service provider independence and flexibility. But in addition to that, that risk taking appetite which is required. If you recall, when I was talking and during my discourse, I categorized the independent workers into 4 segments. So we have free agents, casual earners, reluctants, and financially strapped people. The reluctants and financially strapped people are those people who have a very, I would say, they have very low risk taking ability. They are highly risk averse people. And most of us in a country like Pakistan, which is a low middle income country, it is very common to see people shifting from traditional jobs to independent work, or shifting from traditional jobs to entrepreneurial activities. Similarly, people who are doing just independent work out of necessity, because they are right in Pakistan, where people do not have enough savings, or people do not where consumption patterns and where income levels are not that high income patterns. So it leads to people to become risk averse. And this is, I think, is the major prime reason why people would not like to shift towards digital platforms for providing their services. They feel that they might be losing on more and gaining less. And instead, if they remain in traditional jobs or remain in permanent jobs, they would be happier as far as that income stream is concerned. I would actually, in fact, share with you some anecdotal evidence also. I've been training at the Civil Services Academy for the last 10 years now. I started training there in 2010-11, and it's now 2021. And in these 10 years, 10 cohorts of common training have been, I have interacted with at least 10 cohorts. And I find amongst them people who have been educated at top universities across the world, coming in, taking the civil service exam, getting inducted into the civil service, and then just arguing that it is a permanent, healthy, prestigious job structure which has in fact attracted them to a civil service, is an evidence that the culture of the country as a whole and the society as a whole has influenced their mind so much that even after spending formative years of their life as undergrads at top universities of the world, when they come back, they prefer to go into, I'm not saying that it's bad to go into civil service, but what I'm trying to say is that when people with highly entrepreneurial minds and trainings and exposed to highly entrepreneurial risk-taking environments as far as knowledge infrastructure is concerned, I can count people, and I can tell with names people who have been trained at Stanford, at Harvard, at MIT, at Cambridge, at Oxford, at Australian National University, you name the universities. And when they come back, they lose that entrepreneurial spirit because they needed to come back because of, I don't know what reason A, B, C. And then when they get inducted back into the society, they become that low risk takers. So I think this is the main reason and prime cause that we prefer taking that route, which actually gives us, in fact, gives us that low risk appetite. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. A comprehensive answer. Thank you. So basically what you're saying that the entrepreneurial spirit gets kind of crushed when they come back into a middle income country, not even a middle income, a country that is developing, where we see lack of opportunities, where your finances can multiply innovatively.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Eamon, we have to somehow wind up within 5
Sir,
minutes.
I'd just like to take a question from Ayaz Ahmed sir, because he had raised his hand for some time now.
Okay, thank you. Ayaz was working in PIDE. My question is very simple. In a sense, labor abundant countries already have so much unemployment. After introducing the latest technology, then the unemployment can further increase. Where these countries goes, how they can survive? Thank you.
Nadeem sir, could we have your take on that?
Dekhi, I think we are living in a very different world. We don't need to think about labor abundance and things like that. As I said, the average dihadidar is also a gig economy guy. He goes and looks for a gig and does something. The average chabdiwala is also gig economy guy. We just take the gig economy because it's been reinvented in the West. That is to be taken more seriously. But our bureaucrats every day hit upon the jediwala. He is thrown out. Every dukandar who set up or whatever is called an encroachment. So we've got a hugely problematic economy here. I heard words about entrepreneurship, but our entrepreneurs, we just did a paper in the PhD. Our entrepreneurs are people from large families who have subsidies. There are 31 families who rule Pakistan now, not 22 as Mahbubul Haq said, 31 today. So in 40 years, we've got 9 new families, right? At the same time, we have no governance structures here for any entrepreneurship. Even the gig economy, when it happens because people are connected. I got a call from a fintech guy. He said, hey, I'm doing fintech. I said, okay, how come? Because I've got connections in the army and the bureaucracy, so I can do fintech. He got a license, but somebody else who didn't have a license couldn't get it. Somebody else who didn't have the connections couldn't get the license. I just read the science policy of Pakistan, and science policy of Pakistan keeps saying we need more and more committees and that we need more and more agencies. We've got 10,000 agencies who do nothing but stop initiative. We're an over-bureaucratized, over-regulated country. We've just done in PID a few sludge reports, which means basically how costing regulation. We've got 40 sludge reports out, and the cost of regulation is onerous. We've also done some work on your economic growth issues, and we find that there's a huge number of regulations in this country. And to think that people can become entrepreneurs with that regulation is kind of bizarre. I've seen through my life lots of entrepreneurs come, and the bureaucrats kill them through regulation. I've seen buildings being destroyed because the bureaucrats felt that they were inappropriate. So, I mean, let's face it, we've also calculated the footprint of the government. The footprint of the government is 80% of GDP, right? So where do people invest? So let's take a broader look. It's not a question of technology. I know the standard dictum in Pakistan is that somehow technology is here, so we don't need to change anything. I mean, this has been there since my childhood. When I was a child, they said, oh my God, World Bank is here, we don't need to change anything. Let's keep the same bureaucratic structure. Let's keep the same VIP houses. Let's keep the same rest houses. Let's keep the same judges. You saw the advertisement the other day, a judge wants a 75-inch television from public resources. So we have to really rethink our economy and not just think that it is a question only of bringing in some technology. If you read Why Nations Fail, or if you read any of the literature that's coming out of good economists, you'll see the Pakistan is an extractive state that we inherited from colonialism. We don't want to change it. We don't want to touch that at all. We want the same old peoples living in the same old bureaucratic houses and doing the same old bureaucratic thing. And we want to bring technology in and make the gig economy. I don't think it's going to happen. You saw the results just now, 24 officials and 8 players and no medals and nothing happening in the Olympics. Results are all there for you to see. The data is there. We keep here talking about data and evidence, but we don't look at the data. We are failing in every area. We've got 231 universities, all of which are failing. There are no professors in the universities. We've got 1 million PhDs coming out, all of whom are unemployable. Graduate unemployment is at 30%. Folks, we really need to rethink this economy and not think that doing a niche thing will do anything. The niche thing, I'm afraid we can talk about it. Yes, do this, do that. Not going to do anything. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So now I'd like to invite Shahid Najam Saab to share some closing remarks with us.
Well, first of all, Eamon, thank you very much. The excellent manner in which you have conducted this webinar. Thank you, and hats off to you for that. I would also like to, in particular, express my enormous gratitude to Dr. Nadimul Haq, Dr. Suleiman Aziz Lodi, Dr. Iza Atar, and our friend Dr. Atar Mansoor for having contributed to our effort in advancing an issue of vital significance for the country. I have some observations or some takeaway points which I would like to share, but I would preface my remarks with my personal commitment, and that is that I am basically an optimist. I do not bewail and bemoan. I look forward and see what I can do to bring about a change, and then nobody, no system, no bureaucracy, no judiciary, no autocratic government can prevent me from making my contribution. And that is what we in BIP believe. And our partners with whom we are working, they also believe. They are also cognizant of the huge constraint that we are working. We are also aware of the very, very little appetite for the policy-related work in this country. No room for the evidence-based policy making. Now we have two choices. One is to sit back, and second is to continue making your effort. And that is what we have chosen for. Now, in terms of the observations and takeaways, one thing is absolutely clear, and that is that gig economy is a reality. It's not only the informal sector of chabriwalas and vendors and the aridar, it is also the people who are working on the web space. Look at the comparative advantage. Without the effective, conducive policy environment, the latest figure are that we are growing at a rate of 47%. We are the 4th largest country in terms of going for the gig economy. So that is the kind of a comparative advantage. Now, how we can convert into a competitive advantage and that it can lead to a leapfrogging of the economy in this country. That is the major issue. And I think what the panelists have very aptly and very ably described is that we have to work, number one, at the policy level in order to provide the institute the kind of a conducive framework which would enable, which would stimulate, which would regulate, which would facilitate the gig economy in this country. And Dr. Lodi has already advocated, and I fully agree with me, that we have to have a systemic approach, triple helix approach, that we in BIP are very passionately pursuing also. Then we have to work at the institutional level, look at what is happening. Most of the people and most of the panelists, they also pointed out the lack of our financial infrastructure to respond to the very basic fundamental needs of a freelancer. Opening a bank account. Look at the conversion loss. Look at the delays in the payment. Why cannot we have, like Easy Pesa or PayPal or Amazon type of kind of a payment structure, which would ensure and enable the financial transactions to efficiently and at a cost-effective pace take place. So we have something, what I call it, so we have to work on this institutional system level also. Then we have to look at the infrastructure. Dr. Nadeem Munat has very correctly pointed out the kind of a digital divide and the enormous challenge that we have. I totally agree with Atar Mansoor when he says that we have 40 million people. But then why can't we increase this 17%, given the fact that we are capturing we are the fourth largest participant in the gig economy, and we're one of the fastest growing gig economies in the world. Why cannot, through policy and institutional interventions, give stimulus to this conversion from 20% to 30% to 40%? There has to be some way in order to enable the people to be able to access the internet, to be able to have the right kind of skills and competences framework. Then we have to have the training and productivity issue also, the right kinds of skills that we need to have at a cheap cost. And very important, I think, takeaway which I had from this session was the need for developing a hybrid model. A hybrid model which would not only retain the institutional memory in terms of retaining the capacity, the institutional memory of the organization, whether in the private sector or in the public sector, but also which enables through project-related small assignments access to the right kinds of skills mix, which we can sort of engage the freelancers for that. So there is a need for developing this hybrid human resource and an intellectual model that we need to go for that. I mean, these were some of the takeaways that I think that we need to go away, and we have to work a little bit on all these issues to be able to advocate and to be able to articulate these issues to the decision space, so that one day we shake up and wake up those who have to take the decision, and though gradually, steadily, but steadfastly, we should be able to have access and be able to bring about this change that we all envisage in order to maximize from the opportunities which are being unleashed by the gig economy. Thank you very much once again for all the panelists who have come and joined us and advocated with us on an issue which is of extremely vital significance for the country. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, with this, we have come to the end of our webinar. I'd like to, first of all, extend my gratitude to all the panelists who had taken out time and acceded to be part of this webinar. Thank you for your amazing input, your enlightening discussion, and a very comprehensive answer to each question that was posed in front of you. Thank you. I hope it must have sufficed the purpose of this segment of question answers, number one. Number two, I would also like to extend my gratitude to the attendees of this webinar for having taken out time from their busy schedules to be with us and listen to this webinar and also pose questions and make it more thought-provoking. Thank you very much. Until next time, look after yourselves, follow the SOPs and stay healthy. Look after yourselves. Allah Hafiz.